After losing my memory, I mistook my archenemy for my husband and moved into his house. On the day when I regained my memory, I was pulling his sleeve to kiss him, but the memory came back to me, and I froze. I was about to run away. He, who was always indifferent, frowned, lowered his head, and kissed me, saying helplessly, "Okay, can you stay home now? The story is about to begin. If you like it, please like and follow." Before I regained my memory, I thought Michael was the best husband in the world. I loved him so much that I would cry if I couldn't see him for a second. At the dining table in the morning, I was holding on to Michael's sleeve tightly, tears welling up in my eyes. "Are you going to abandon me again? Sophia, let go." The man I was holding had a cold expression, twitched his arm, and the buttons of his suit made a dangerous groan. I held his arms tightly, saying in a resentful tone, "Brother, that's not what you said at the beginning. You said you would love me forever. I would really die without you." This kind of conversation happens every morning. On average, I make a scene every 2 or 3 days, and only Michael can calm me down. Michael closed his eyes and gave up struggling. "I'm going to a meeting and will be back tonight." "How late is it tonight?" "I'm scared to sleep alone." Seeing that he didn't say anything, I began to cry with my head down. Michael had a flash of headache on his face, and he held back his temper and asked in a low voice, "Tell me, what do you want again?" I turned my face to the side and pointed at my cheek. "You haven't kissed me yet." My delicate figure is reflected in the mirror. Michael is tall and slender, sitting next to me. It's really a match made in heaven. Before I could finish my sigh, my thoughts suddenly stopped. That handsome face gradually overlapped with the face in my mind. As the memory came back, I froze in place. My infatuated gaze gradually turned into horror. What am I doing? I, Sophia, the CEO of Sophia Family Group, fought Michael to death in the business war, and now I am crazy and call Michael my husband? I tensed up and was about to say something sarcastic when Michael, who was always indifferent, frowned and leaned over to kiss me on the side of my cheek. The cold kiss was like an electric current, flowing through my body in an instant. Michael said helplessly, "Okay, can you stay home now?" Michael left, and I stood there in a daze for 20 minutes. Did he just kiss me? Talking about the relationship between Michael and I, it's no exaggeration to say that we stab each other in the back whenever we meet. The last time we met, I even cursed him with a smile that he died young. Michael glanced at me indifferently and replied indifferently, "Then I'm afraid I'll have to drag Sophia to be buried with me." Who would have thought that in just half a month, I would experience a car accident, amnesia, fall in love with Michael at first sight, and even pester him to move into his private residence? What a sin. The villa was quiet. I sat in the chair and calmed down for a long time. I was sure of one thing: I must not admit that I had recovered my memory. Michael would laugh at me for the rest of my life. I frantically searched my suitcase in the room and finally found my work phone in a hidden pocket. When the secretary received my call, she almost cried, "Sophia, where have you been for the past half-month? Michael is almost stealing all your business." I was so angry that my teeth itched. No wonder he had been so gentle to me in the past half-month. Was he laughing at me in his heart while madly swallowing up my business? "The order for Yuching will be signed today, right?" The secretary was as anxious as an ant on a hot pot. "Yes, you disappeared for more than half a month, and Yuching is planning to sign with Michael." My heart sank, and I immediately stood up and put on my clothes. "Michael, I'll go stop him, and tell William that if he can't get the order, I'll fire him." That day, I took the next flight after Michael and landed in Yuching. The project here has always been handled by the company's vice president William, and I, a new face, am just right for showing my talents. In the banquet hall at night, the wine was flowing. I looked at the glass in the lobby with satisfaction at the light golden fishtail dress on my body. I bought it with Michael's card during the period of amnesia. Together with the jewelry, I spent nearly 10 million yuan. Even the plane ticket this time was paid with his card. Michael must have known I was coming. I stood at the door, looking around the crowd, but didn't see Michael. Just as I was about to leave, my back suddenly bumped into a hard body. The cool and elegant Woody scent instantly enveloped me. Michael's familiar tone, with cold sarcasm, entered his ears. "Sophia is not pretending anymore?" I was stunned for a second, then suddenly turned around and threw myself into his arms. "Honey, I missed you so much." The movement was too big, revealing a large area of my back, which attracted a lot of people's attention. "Who is this?" "It seems to be Mrs. Michael." Michael was startled, and with a sullen face, he covered me with his coat, and took me to the pantry by my waist. The cold table pressed against my hips, causing the cutlery to clink. Michael's eyes darkened. Sophia, what do you want to do? He would only call me by my full name when I lost my memory. It seemed that I had fooled him again. I played with his tie, my eyes wandering. Nothing, I just missed you. Tell the truth. I couldn't hold on to the smile on my face anymore. My mouth corners drooped and my eyes instantly turned red. They said that you have a lover in Yuching. I came to see. Michael's eyes were devoid of warmth. That's not the case. You're lying. I kicked him in anger. Just now I saw you talking to a woman. You don't love me anymore. Michael frowned. That's the partner. Of course I know that's the partner, Vice President Yao of Yuching Minghua Group. I turned my head away. I don't believe it. Unless you take me with you tonight. Michael lost his temper because of me, okay. That night, I held Michael's arm and chatted happily with the representatives of Minghua Group like a happy butterfly. Michael was interrupted by me several times. Finally, he sat in the corner, staring at me silently with dark eyes, and I didn't know what he was thinking. As soon as the party ended, Michael took me back to the room. As the door slammed shut, the surroundings fell into darkness. Michael's rough fingertips pressed on my neck and gently stroked it. Sophia, why didn't I realize that you were so sociable? His voice was steady, and with the blessing of darkness, it was abstinent and alluring. I drank a few glasses tonight and felt a little dizzy. I leaned into his arms and complained stickily, I just don't want you to talk to other women. I secretly shook off the goosebumps all over my body. Damn, so embarrassing. I am actually like this after losing my memory? Michael sneered for no reason. You have no status, but you are so domineering. When he put me on the bed, his cell phone suddenly rang. The flickering light was a bit dazzling in the dark night. He picked up the phone. Michael's secretary's words floated out through the receiver. Michael, the order for Yuching was taken away by Sophia's people. Who are you talking about? Her William. The room was dead silent, and the clock in the corner kept beating in time with the beating of my heart, striking my nerves. I hooked my foot to him nonchalantly, holding my breath and waiting for Michael's reaction. My suit pants made a rustling sound. He hung up the phone, his thin lips tinged with a cold smile. Sophia, you know I have to sign a contract today, right? I rested my head in his arms, smelling his lingering fragrance, and remained silent. He pinched my chin, lifted it up and looked at it for a moment, then suddenly smiled. Have you recovered your memory? I was shocked. If I admitted this, I would die here tonight. I uttered a few words in confusion. Honey, it's hot. He saw my face flushed with alcohol, and his deep eyes were fixed on my face. Michael concealed the deep and calculating look in his eyes and said in a gentle tone, Sophia, do you think I'm a joke? I like you. How could you play a trick? Michael's smile faded, and he lowered his head and bit my lips. There was a hint of unresolved anger in the kiss, and the bloody smell spread between my lips and teeth. Michael didn't let me go until I frowned in pain. He touched my messy hair and smiled coldly. Go on, what else do you want to say? Husband, listen. I took a deep breath, and looked at him sincerely. I love you, ah. With a sharp ripping sound, my skirt was torn apart at the waist. Michael's eyes were filled with ruthlessness. You really won't cry until you see the coffin. He forcefully held me in a corner, interlaced his 5 fingers with my palm, and chuckled. I hope you can say the same thing when you regain your memory. Otherwise, I don't mind killing you with my own hands. In the past, my evaluation of Michael was, a despicable wild dog. After all, he is different from me. He is not from a famous family, but has worked hard step by step to get to where he is today. It is said that people who crawl out of the cannibal cave will do everything they can to grab resources. Michael is such a person. He will not give in and is annoying. I remembered that I flirted with him out of anger because his business was taken away. Michael replied nonchalantly, want to keep me? I'm afraid Sophia is too poor to afford it. But tonight, Michael's out-of-control look made me feel a little relieved. How does the saying go? I get it for free. Michael has always been a germaphobe. When the day comes when we have a falling out, I don't know whether he will laugh at me more or I will laugh at him more. My thoughts were suddenly shattered by the force behind me. Michael's lazy and low voice came from behind me. Distracted? His warm and moist breath sprayed on my skin. I bit my lip subconsciously and sneered subconsciously. Did you not eat? Michael paused, and then a low laugh came slowly, like ripples in the night. Okay. Just one word okay, and no more words. The rest was just a fierce and intensified attack. The next morning, I struggled to wake up from my dream. The pain in my body was getting worse. I gritted my teeth and sat up, and touched the phone that had fallen under the bed. After switching to the WeChat account, a message from William popped up on the interface. Sophia, it's done. Also, James surrendered to us and sent us some things. James, who is by Michael's side, started his business with him from scratch, and the two of them are considered good brothers. But 6 months ago, he and Michael frequently had conflicts, and it was suspected that the spoils were not divided equally. I put some thought into James, and I didn't expect that today I finally got the result. I paused for a moment and asked, what is it? The evidence of Michael stealing trade secrets will be delivered to him this time. My first thought was that this was a trap set by Michael himself, specifically for me. After thinking for a moment, I said, send it to my email and I'll review it myself. William was anxious. Sophia, don't hesitate. Do as I say. As soon as I hung up the phone, the door was pushed open. Michael stood at the door, staring at my darkened phone screen, and asked slowly and softly, who are you calling? I hid my phone in panic. No one. Michael narrowed his eyes and walked towards me. I kicked his knee as he approached me, frowned and said, it hurts. What hurts? Michael didn't react yet. What do you mean it hurts? My ears turned red. This is the first time I've encountered something like this. I can't ask someone. Thinking back to how intense last night was, I still feel a lingering fear. Michael paused, his voice tense. Is this something I can ask others? He held my foot and leaned over to tuck it into my slippers. Get out of bed. I'll take you to see a doctor. I don't know if it's an illusion, but Michael's temper has improved a lot compared to when I lost my memory. It was early spring in Yuching, and the weather was still a little cold. When I came out of the hospital, I accidentally hit my foot. I was filled with resentment. If it wasn't for acting with him, I wouldn't have come to the hospital and injured my foot. Carry me. I stood on the steps, feeling somewhat righteous. What did you say? Michael, who was always indifferent when looking at people, frowned at this moment, seeming to have bad intentions. I crossed my arms and repeated word for word, I want you to carry me. I thought Michael was going to mock me again, but he turned around, squatted down, and waved. Come up. Has he really changed his personality? I half believed and half doubtedly lay on his broad back, staring at the hair behind his ears. Michael's arms were tight and steady, carrying me through the crowded hospital, my black hair swaying in the wind. You know what, he really looks like a wild dog. Where do you want to go? Michael suddenly asked, and I was stumped by the question. You don't want to talk about business? He said indifferently, it didn't work out. It's over. I felt a bit gloating and pretended to be angry and yelled, which bastard dares to steal your business, ouch. My thigh hurt so much that I almost bit my tongue. Michael sneered and released the strength in his hands, it's quite rough, really rough. I stopped making a fuss and quietly lay on Michael's back, thinking carefully about William's words. I really don't believe that Michael has been doing business for many years and has no evidence. But if he said he broke the law and stole business secrets, it's not so credible. Maybe, instead of killing Michael, I will get myself into trouble. As the sky gradually darkened, Yuching caught up with the holiday crowds, and the light festival after nightfall was very lively. It brought me back to reality from my deep thoughts. The various street stalls and snacks added a touch of fireworks to this ancient street. I got off Michael's back and looked around curiously. This was my first time visiting this kind of ancient street. The pink starch sausage fell into the oil, splashing with a sizzling aroma. The proprietress was very enthusiastic, 3 for 10 yuan, do you want to try it? Michael answered for me, no. Seeing that I was somewhat unhappy, he said, it's not clean, let's go. I resisted, rolling my eyes. He was born in a poor family, yet he was still poor and picky. When I arrived at the noodle shop, I couldn't walk anymore, so I just sat on a stool in the outdoor courtyard. Michael frowned, and before he could pull me up, the waiter brought me the bowls and chopsticks. Scan the code to order. I was afraid Michael would be too busy, so I quickly took out my phone to scan the code. He then sat down, asked for a pot of hot water, and carefully poured water over the dishes for me. I looked at him suspiciously, why don't you water your own? Michael didn't even raise his eyes, I'm not that particular. Now it was my turn to be stunned. So he said it was unclean because he disliked it on my behalf? I thought about the glorious moment when I spent 10 million of his money in just half a month. Michael had every reason to think that I was extravagant, dissolute and picky. The waiter brought 2 bowls of crab roe noodles. I ate half a bowl and left the other half, and I ate slower than Michael. The waiter stood nearby and chatted with someone, why are there so many people today? I heard that the fence of Mingjai Bridge was collapsed just now, and several people fell down. Michael glanced at the time and said, "Let's go after we're full. There are too many people today, it's not safe." I was about to stand up when someone pushed me and I almost fell. Michael quickly grabbed me and looked towards the street with a serious expression. "Don't go, that's not right." When I reacted, I found that the originally slow-moving crowd had become like a blocked river. In just half a minute, the crowd density exploded rapidly, squeezing people into the shops on the roadside. The commotion came from far away. Along with the cries, inexplicable panic began to spread. The flow of people exceeded the limit of the commercial street, and a stampede occurred in the middle of the road. The store owner immediately closed the glass door, blocking the crowded crowd outside. In a few seconds, Michael roughly stuffed me into a narrow gap at the junction of two shops. "Lean against the wall, don't move." Michael leaned against the wall and stood in front of me. Soon, a violent push reached our side. I heard the sound of people falling to the ground, gasps squeezed out by the stomping of their chests, and vomiting. Michael's face turned pale, but he remained motionless, lowered his head and said nothing. A small space was squeezed out for me in the crowded crowd. I wanted to reach out and hug him, but he stopped me. "There's someone behind you, if you want to crush my arm, just try." I realized that he had reached his limit and even speaking was a little difficult. At that moment, I clutched his shirt. "Michael, are you going to die?" His breath was unstable. "Curse me, you want to be a widow." This horrific stampede lasted for a long time. It was unknown how long it took before the crowd dispersed. People were lying in all directions on the street, and cries were heard everywhere. Michael immediately knelt down along the wall and fell into my arms. I hugged him, the lights of the ambulance flashed in front of my eyes, and I shouted anxiously, "Doctor, doctor, here." Michael's breathing was weak and his fingertips were cold. There was a deep wound on the back of his hand, as if it was cut by some iron decoration. The palm of his hand was bloody due to the friction of the rough wall. I didn't dare to touch his hand. On the way to the hospital, I stared at the indicators on the monitor and felt cold all over. The doctor said Michael might die. He was pushed into the emergency room. The doctor stopped me and asked, "Who are you to him?" "Spouse. This is a critical illness notice. Please sign it." I signed my name below and watched the door of the emergency room close. A strange sense of absurdity came over me. I smiled. What the hell? Michael risked his life to save me. When our house caught fire, even my parents didn't save me, so what was Michael supposed to do? A brainless stray dog. A stupid and gullible stray dog. The little girl next to me shrank behind her mother and pointed at me and said, "Mom, that sister is crying and laughing, it's so scary." The woman covered the child's mouth and said, "Stop causing mental problems and leave." The night was getting darker. I waited until my whole body was numb, and then the doctor came. "Your husband is currently stable, and needs to be further observed. He can be transferred to the general ward after the critical period." After thanking the doctor, I began a long wait. I didn't know who to contact. I didn't know Michael's family or his relatives. The accident was like a bond that bound him and me together. A few days later, Michael was transferred to a general ward. William called me and said, "Sophia, James's information is absolutely reliable. Just trust me for once." I looked at Michael, who was lying on the bed with his eyes closed, and said, "Wait until I get back. Don't do anything rash without my permission." William was a little unhappy, but didn't say anything. That afternoon, Michael woke up. The ward was quiet, and the warm yellow sunlight fell on the spider plant beside the bed. I was sleeping on his bed because I was tired. Michael moved his arm and accidentally woke me up from my dream. He looked at my work phone that I had thrown aside, frowned, and said nothing. He knew I remembered. The next second, I rushed over and hugged his neck, my mouth curled and a tear rolled down. Michael's eyebrows relaxed and he held my waist. "I'm not crushed to death by others, but I'm almost crushed to death by you." I just kept sobbing and didn't say anything. Finally, Michael patted me gently and said, "Please call a doctor for me. I need to know about my condition." Michael is indeed a wild dog. After waking up, his condition got better day by day. We all tacitly avoided talking about my memory recovery. The return trip was scheduled for the last day of the holiday. When we boarded the plane, Michael packed a lot of luggage, most of which were small things I deliberately spent his money to buy. Sitting on the plane, watching Yuching shrink rapidly and gradually disappear into the sea of clouds, I felt like I was dreaming. Returning to the battlefield between Michael and me was the reality. I was never Michael's wife, but an opponent who wanted to kill him. "Is that how you put it together?" Michael's voice came from the side, pulling me back to my thoughts. A wooden cherry tree model appeared on his lap. I bought it earlier and asked Michael to help me put it together. I took the model and held it in my arms, yes. Michael looked at me twice, said nothing, closed the drawing, and waited for the plane to land. The airport was crowded after the holiday. We pushed the luggage cart and made many detours in the airport before we slowly approached the exit. I saw William. I knew that some dramas had to end. I looked up at Michael and was about to speak. He suddenly held me in his arms. Remember what I said to you that night? Those fierce, threatening words? My heart skipped a beat, as if something was pulling it, sour and bitter. Michael said, "Come back when you've decided what you want to tell me." Then he pushed me into the crowd, toward William. William smiled at me. "Sophia, as expected, I brought the police." Hearing these two words, my blood suddenly froze. Several policemen walked out from behind William and skillfully showed their IDs to Michael. "Michael, someone has reported that you are suspected of commercial crime. Come with us." The commotion here immediately attracted many people to watch. I turned around in shock. I saw Michael's gentle smile froze on the corner of his lips. With a click, the handcuffs locked the wrist bone that had not yet healed. I took a step forward, but was knocked back to where I was by the surging crowd. I was pushed and shoved further and further away from him. "So that's how it is." Michael stared at me and spoke in a light tone. I opened my mouth. "It's not me." Michael lowered his eyes and smiled. "Sophia has set up a big chess game. Do you want to kill me?" William retorted, "Michael is not a good person, so you can't blame others." Michael raised his eyes again, with that familiar sharpness and indifference in his eyes again. "What a dishonest person. When you, Sophia, pretended to have amnesia and played with my feelings, why didn't you think about dishonest person?" I felt a slight pain in my heart. Michael smiled sarcastically at my red eyes and said, "Did I say something wrong?" I said, "I'm wrong. I wasn't the one who called the police. 3 months ago, it wasn't you who asked my brother for evidence?" I have nothing to say. I did have that thought. It was me who asked his brother for evidence. The policeman pushed him and said, "Stop talking nonsense and get in the car." Michael stumbled a few steps, his injuries agitated, and he frowned. Before getting in the car, he stopped, turned around, and said something to me. I could see his lips clearly. He said, "Sophia, wait for me to come back. I will kill you with my own hands." Michael was only investigated for 3 days before he was released. His brother James suddenly turned against him and insisted that William fabricated the evidence. William came to me with a pale face and begged, "Sophia, I really didn't know James would play a trick on me." I warned William to be cautious about this matter. But his ambition expanded too quickly and he was blinded by desire. I was only missing for half a month, and he acted recklessly like a wild horse. I sat by the window, looking at the tall buildings outside, without saying a word. Now, Michael has turned the tables, using William's malicious report to put the Sophia family in a credibility crisis. Relevant departments have already intervened in the investigation, and at the same time, Michael has begun to retaliate against the Sophia family. The successive operations have caused the company's market value to plummet, and overnight, it was in turmoil. People were coming in and out of my office, and the lights were on all night. A few days later, my subordinate said with a pale face, "Sophia, Michael has killed us, and we can't stand it at all. He said that if you want to keep the company, you can go and ask him in person." After working so hard for several days, I caught a bad cold. When I dragged my sick body to Michael's office, I was told that he was in a meeting and I needed to wait. There were no benches to sit on, so I had to stand outside the door. The temperature had dropped a few days ago, and the corridor was as cold as an ice cellar with the windows open. I felt very uncomfortable and barely leaned against the glass wall of his office to relieve myself. I don't know how long it was before the door was suddenly opened from the inside. Michael's frosted face appeared in my sight, and he didn't even speak with any warmth. "What? Is Sophia's sincerity so cheap?" I couldn't hold on any longer and fell gently on his shoulder. Michael's hand squeezed me so hard that it hurt. His tone was cold and hard, with a strong sense of disgust. "Stay away from me. Do I look cheap?" "Michael." I interrupted him, my voice was nasal. "I feel uncomfortable, let me lean on you for a while." In an instant, the room fell into an eerie silence. I had a fever all over my body, and the wind was blowing, so I was shaking all over. Michael carried me to his own lounge. While the doctor took my temperature, Michael and James stayed outside. "Michael, are you sick? How cold is it in the hallway?" "She vomited just now." "Is she pregnant?" Michael opened the door. "Doctor, she..." "Get out." Michael closed the door again, adding a hint of annoyance to his tone. Stop talking. Michael, in our line of work, the worst thing we can do is fall in love with. Get lost. My throat was burning with fever and I was hoarse. The doctor prescribed some medicine, and after I drank it, I fell into a coma while lying on my side on the bed. In my dream, I saw the fire again. I looked through a window at my parents who were leaving me and cried until my voice was hoarse. Later, they said, "Don't blame your parents. With such a huge fortune, someone has to support it." As a child, I was useless to them. They didn't need to risk their lives to save me. Over the years, I developed a mercenary character, calculating gains and losses in everything. I never did a business that would lose money. I woke up from my dream. The room was dark and the clock in the corner was ticking slowly. I was sweating and felt a little sticky, so I just got out of bed. Outside was Michael's office. He was standing in front of the French window. The faint neon light illuminated his profile, and his expression was obscure. Michael tilted his head and stared at me, like a vicious dog staring at its prey. "I suggest you stay indoors for 2 days. I crossed my arms and glanced at him lazily. Restricting personal freedom is against the law. Michael's eyes were dark and quiet, like an ice cellar. I thought he would say something like, "You can go wherever you want, but don't die here." Unexpectedly, Michael said, "That's right, I'm going to lock you up, and you have to die here." He didn't really care about me. It's just that the doctor would come at a fixed time every day to help me hang up the drip and observe my condition. I don't like to toss around, so I just settled down here. Even when Michael was in a meeting, I opened the door and listened to their plans. From the initial resistance, everyone gradually turned a blind eye. Even James began to call me sister-in-law in an inappropriate way, and Michael kicked him out every time. With me as an insider, the situation at the company has eased a lot. We can finally take a breath. I have not been idle these days. William went to work, and I promoted a new vice president. All the bad habits under William were eliminated overnight. The company is like wild grass growing wildly after rain, and it is full of vitality. After I recovered from my cold, I immediately directed everyone to do something ruthless to Michael. This was an explanation to the entire company. On a quiet afternoon, the door of the lounge was pushed open. I was lying on the rocking chair by the window. Before I opened my eyes, I was grabbed by the waist and thrown into the soft blanket. Michael's voice was terribly cold. "Sophia, you dare to plot against me under my roof? Aren't you afraid of breaking your proud neck?" I stared at his gloomy face and smiled. "Michael, killing is against the law." After saying that, I fearlessly pushed his lower abdomen with my bare feet. "Really?" Michael's voice was low and deep, and he suddenly turned me over. "Even if I don't kill you, I have plenty of ways to make you die." At this moment, I realized that the fire I had just started was burning more and more fiercely. He suddenly pulled me under him. The familiar and refreshing fragrance, driven by the rising body temperature, became stronger and stronger, mixed with the fragrance of my flowers, unwillingly making trouble and floating. I pushed him nervously, but he held my arm back. "Apology to me," Michael said. My competitive spirit was aroused, and I looked up and sneered, "What have I done wrong? I lied to you, and you believed me. The fault is yours. You serve me, and I make money." Michael's smile disappeared without a trace, and he pinched my jaw and kissed me hard. "Okay, I'll serve you. No matter how hard I try to serve you, you have to bear it." This was probably the first time we had a fight outside of a shopping mall. We both held our breath, not wanting to let the other have an easy time. Michael's forehead was covered with beads of sweat, and he gritted his teeth. "Sophia, relax, do you want to see me die?" I actually didn't have much strength left, and physiological tears kept welling up in my eyes. But I couldn't help being angry, so I punched him hard. "You bastard, be gentle, can you serve me?" A curse was exchanged for an even more severe revenge. Michael bit my ear hard, brushed aside the wet hair at my temples, and whispered, "What about now? Sophia, how do you feel now?" I got so angry that I bit his shoulder. In the end, I was too exhausted to hold on any longer. Michael lowered his head and nudged my palm with his rough stubble. He was just like a dog. "Admit your fault." I grabbed his hair tightly and cried back, "Please beg me." Michael said in a low voice, "Please admit your mistake." "No." Before I passed out, I heard a helpless sigh. Michael let me go. Since that day, we have never met again. We even avoided each other in various business meetings. For a while, the two companies, which had been fighting for many years, reached a strange peace. The new vice president is a gossipy girl. One day, she came to me and said, "Sophia, I heard Michael has a girlfriend." I touched the wooden cherry blossom ornament on the table and asked, "Where did you get the news?" She took out her cell phone and said, "Look, taking a girl shopping, what else can she be if not a girlfriend?" I looked at the photo of Michael following someone like a butler, carrying bags and stuff, and suddenly smiled. "That's good." The little girl shrank her neck, perhaps because she felt it was cold in the room, and quickly slipped out. My parents kept calling me. "Have you thought through the marriage proposal I told you about last time?" I leaned against the pillow. "I don't want to." "Then your mother and I will leave our shares to your cousin. From now on, you can come back to this house or not. Sophia's family is like this. It has always been women are inferior to men. My position in their hearts is not even as high as that of a cousin." Actually, I was going to agree to my original plan. But in the middle, some episodes occurred. I thought about it and said, "Let's make an appointment. I'll go home." Unexpectedly, the arranged marriage was made known to everyone in the city by both parents. The person I was arranged to marry was the same age as me, and he had changed girlfriends hundreds of times. The abortion fee he paid to the woman every year was enough to buy a sports car. In order to meet us, our parents even arranged a lively dinner. When the lights came on, I was wearing a complicated haute couture dress and wandering aimlessly among the crowd. I didn't know where the second-generation rich kid had gone, leaving me alone to deal with the guests. At 7:30 in the evening, a black Rolls-Royce drove in from the darkness. When Michael got out of the car, he was holding a bottle of red wine in his hand. His attire tonight was different from usual, a little too eye-catching and noble. I squinted my eyes and stared at the watch on his wrist, wondering when did Michael start to like wearing something this flashy. Under everyone's suspicious gaze, he walked towards me without any disguise, like a wolf locking onto a target. This feeling of being targeted gave me a strange feeling of reassurance. "Sophia, I don't wish you good luck in finding a good partner yet." Michael came to me and handed me the red wine. I smiled formally and said, "Thank you." Since Michael and I usually fight to the death, many people were secretly observing us. Michael didn't say anything else and took a seat nearby. I accepted Michael's gift and turned to deal with other guests. There was less than half an hour left before the banquet started. My feet were covered in blisters from my high heels. I thought, the gift from that rich kid couldn't be good stuff. I went up to the second floor, opened the bedroom door, and planned to change my shoes. But before I could turn on the light, someone stepped across and blocked the door frame. Michael's tall figure blocked the light outside. I held the door handle. "What do you want to do?" Michael held my wrist tightly and led me away from the door. As the door closed, he led me into the dark room. Instantly, our breaths merged. "You seem to be uncomfortable walking, your feet hurt?" Michael held my waist and groped slowly. I kicked him gently. "You know why you didn't let go? Aren't you afraid that your girlfriend will see it?" Michael was silent for a moment. "Where did your girlfriend come from? You forgot about it right after you went shopping with someone? What a scumbag." As I spoke, I couldn't help but feel a sour taste in my voice. Michael's dark eyes fell on my face for a moment, and suddenly he pinched my chin and kissed me forcefully. "He is crazy." I was so angry that I raised my hands to hit him, but he grabbed my hands and pressed them against the wall. "Don't move." Michael said in a low voice, "You are jealous of me, and I can't coax you." Seeing that I wanted to scold him again, Michael said, "She's not my girlfriend, she's my sister, she's my kiss." "Oh, what does it have to do with me?" I gasped, standing on the moral high ground, and began to talk a lot. "I'm going to get engaged soon. Do I need you to coax me? What qualifications do you have to coax me? I like you." Those four abrupt words made my heart suddenly feel heavy. In the darkness, Michael's blazing eyes burned my heart like boiling water, churning endlessly. But I still blushed and said stubbornly, "So you just wished me to find a good match?" Michael smiled, with a hint of determination in his eyes. "I am the good match, and that blind second-generation idiot can die wherever he wants." "Wild dog." Michael heard me mumbling and laughed, as if he was satisfied with my scolding. "Do you dare to scold me again? Wild dog. Woof. Shameless." Half an hour later, Michael and I came out of the room, our legs shaking. Michael leaned over and whispered behind my ear, "Miss, I've secured this marriage." His scent was on me, and I rubbed my hair with a guilty conscience. "If you can't fix it, you'll die." Michael laughed. "There's nothing I can't handle. Especially, about you." I know Michael is a ruthless man, and his methods are ruthless, so I was thinking of taking a gamble tonight. If Michael can do it, I will be free from now on. If he can't, it will just be another second-generation rich kid in the family, and there are plenty of ways to deal with him. The banquet was about to begin. I followed my parents to the stage. The man was still nowhere to be found, and his parents nodded at me expressionlessly. It seemed that they didn't take me seriously. My father cleared his throat and said, "I have invited you all here tonight because I have something important to announce. My eldest daughter, Sophia, has reached the age of marriage and is in love with Mr. Zhu." At this point, Michael, who was standing in the audience, suddenly chuckled, "Are you in sync?" His voice was not loud, but clearly audible. I thought he would wait a while before intervening, but Michael didn't even want to wait. My dad stopped talking and frowned. "Michael has any objection?" "Yes." Michael walked up to the crowd and stood under the crystal chandelier, his eyes shining. "I have a problem with Miss Sophia's marriage." The decisive words made my dad laugh. "I know Michael and Sophia don't get along well, but today is a big day for our family." "Is this how Michael is brought up?" Michael was not annoyed, his brows were cold. "If I am not well-mannered, then how well-mannered is that second-generation rich man who asks women to give him abortions every day?" The faces of the man's parents changed. Everyone was whispering and talking. These nobles had always looked down on Michael's humble background, but because of his current status, they did not dare to offend him. Their words were full of sarcasm, which was only reserved for respectable people. "Michael's parents probably didn't teach you that if you harm someone's marriage, you will be struck by lightning." Michael raised his eyebrows. "I will replenish whoever's I damaged." "Sophia, how about marrying me?" This remark startled all the guests. "What? Michael and Sophia, how is that possible? He's not seeking revenge, is he?" Michael turned a deaf ear to him, raised his eyes coldly, and said to Zhu's parents, "Your son married her and asked her parents to threaten her with equity, use all means, gamble her career, and break her wings. With me, you don't need to do anything. Whether it's shares or rights, whatever she wants, she'll have it. If you don't give her the treatment of a rich lady, I will. You are all businessmen." He took out an agreement and threw it aside in the light. "It's written in black and white. The interests are clearly defined. I'll write it down as proof." The whole place was in complete silence. Michael had just shown me the densely packed agreement. I really wanted to open his brain to see if he was a love-brained person. My parents looked at the terms and conditions above, and there was a hint of joy in their eyes. This was much better than marrying into the Zhu family. I looked into Michael's dark eyes, and something slowly flowed out from the bottom of my heart, washing over the scab-covered wounds. It was painful and itchy. Zhu's parents were speechless. They let me take the agreement from Michael under everyone's gaze. I signed my name in 2 strokes. Then I kicked off my high heels. "It hurts, give me a new pair." "Okay." Michael calmly squatted down and put on the flat shoes he had prepared for me. Everyone's eyes almost popped out of their heads. They all asked about the situation between Michael and me. Michael changed his shoes, threw the high heels away, stood up, took me and left. The late spring cold weather has passed, and the night is cool. But Michael's palms are hot. The bright moonlight shines on our shoulders, and neither of us speaks. Michael got in the car and started the engine. "Who are we going to?" I started to suffer from insomnia after changing my bed, so I threw the key to my house to him. Michael didn't say anything and drove me home. I still remember that when I bought this large flat in the city center, I met Michael at the sales office. We had a quarrel over a trivial matter. I mocked him at the time, saying, "You are not worthy of being in a formal place." Now, Michael opened the door and leaned against the entrance, his eyes dim. Thinking of the past, I felt a little uncomfortable. "What are you doing standing there?" Michael chuckled. "I think now I have entered the realm of the master." I took out a pair of disposable slippers from the shoe cabinet for him. "Do you know how to use idioms? They are used to describe knowledge or skills." Michael hummed but said nothing. I felt strange. "Hey, why don't you say anything?" The feeling of weightlessness suddenly hit me. I screamed and found myself being held by Michael and sitting on the dining table. Hot air poured down from above my head. Michael rubbed my fingertips. "Then come and test me, Mississippi. Do you have any skills to master them?" After spending so much time together, Michael has already understood my temperament and my weaknesses. Tonight, he restrained his wildness and took me into the endless hot kiss. I hooked my arms around his neck and crossed my hands behind his neck, taking a more proactive approach. "Sophia, the last time you lied to me, the matter has not yet been resolved." I was annoyed by him and glared at him. Michael stopped while he was ahead, smiled and lowered his head, letting me grab his hair. "I won't say any more, it's my fault." The night deepened. Ripples appeared on the water surface in the vase. The scorching heat caused the delicate petals to open, and the stamens poked out from the open petals, swaying fragilely. I bit Michael's shoulder and snorted, "You bastard, take it easy." Michael's low and hoarse voice seemed to be mixed with poison, tempting me to gradually sink in. "I have no education, you teach me. Sophia, teach me." Michael's decision to marry me was strongly opposed by his company's board of directors. The argument started early in the morning. After marrying Sophia, who will be the boss of the company in the end, Michael or Sophia? I've been fighting Sophia's family my whole life, and I don't agree. Chairman, if you want to marry her, you have to fire me. We've already obtained the marriage certificate. Michael dropped a thunderbolt and looked at the other party indifferently. Mr. G, if you insist on leaving, I have no choice but to. Wait. Mr. G sat down tremblingly. Let's discuss this matter later. It's not negotiable. Michael said calmly, she is my wife. I want to be buried with her after I die. Facing the indignant shareholders, Michael frowned. I didn't ask you to be buried with the Sophia family, what do you have to object to? I watched the live broadcast from James's front line and curled my lips slightly. I have to say that getting married with Michael was the best decision I have ever made in my life. He is fully capable of handling all the troubles and will not hold me back. On the contrary, I am not as easy to deal with as Michael and his gang of old guys. My cousin took the lead in attacking me during the morning meeting. Why are you so mean? Why marry someone else when you can't? Why marry the enemy? No wonder people say women are stupid. After having sex with someone, they don't care about anything else. I threw the copy of the contract I signed last night at him and said, I think you are lacking in brains. You don't choose the benefits written in black and white, but you choose the empty words of the Zhu family. I advise you to cover your butt. If you get fucked by a man one day, you will get hot-headed and get sold and have to help others count the money. My cousin's face turned purple, and he slammed the table in public. Sophia, you have the final say in this company. I laughed out loud. Why? Did my parents give you the shares? If I give it to him, he will have the ability to challenge me. However, it is obvious that he did not. My cousin was hit in the foot by me. Once you get married, you should take care of your husband and children. Business is a man's job, you can go wherever you want. I'm used to his tone. I smiled and said, I'm sorry, as a woman, I need to call the security guard to have you, a man, dragged out. My cousin was still shouting when he was dragged away. Several shareholders were trying to excuse him. I sneered, are you sure that I can't get my parents' shares? There was a flicker of hesitation in their eyes. I propped myself on the table and said word by word, before the dust settles, I advise you to keep your tails between your legs. Otherwise, I don't mind throwing you out like garbage. After appeasing the employees of both sides, the two companies began to promote various cooperation. That day, Michael came into my office with a bang. Several old-timers were so angry that they yelled, do you really think this is your home? Michael sat on the sofa, acting like a queen, and without saying a word, he made several people jump with anger. I smiled and said, okay, you guys go out first, I have something to talk to Michael. After a few people left, the room became quiet. I put down my pen and asked him, what's up? Michael brought a cake and placed it on my table. Happy birthday to you. I was stunned and a little dazed. I had never celebrated my birthday in more than 20 years. Michael actually remembered it today. I looked at the pattern on the cake carefully. The crooked peach must have been Michael's work. It was such an old-fashioned style that it was no longer popular. I opened the box and pointed at the peach. How did you come up with this design? Michael's face flashed with an unnatural look. When I was a kid, I saw other people celebrating their birthdays like this. Why? It's not pretty? I rarely use this now. Michael coughed lightly. It's okay, just forget it if you don't like it. After a while, he seemed a little aggrieved and said, I really think the longevity peach is the most beautiful. I suddenly understood what he meant. Michael had never celebrated his birthday. When he was young, the peach cake in the window that he couldn't afford was the white moonlight in his heart. He naturally thought that this was the best. I quietly put in the candles and said, I didn't say I didn't like it. Remember to add a few more words next year. May you be blessed as vast as the East Sea and live as long as the southern mountains. Michael smiled softly. Okay. Michael doesn't like sweets, but he sat opposite me and helped me cut the cake. He cut a bite and I ate a bite. During the break, I also received the jewelry he ordered. Michael saw me eating and handed me the paper. Tomorrow, I have to go on a business trip. So urgent? I was startled. You didn't wait until today to celebrate my birthday, did you? Michael avoided his gaze. Nothing. Only at this moment did I really believe it. Michael had never been in a relationship and couldn't even lie. I leaned across the table. Michael. His eyes fell on my face, his gaze focused. I suddenly kissed him on the lips. Come back soon. Michael's ears turned red, and he turned and left without saying a word. Michael was gone for a week, and my cousin led people to make trouble for a week. The continuous rain for several days made people feel depressed. Now, I heard that my cousin quarreled with people in the lobby again. After I finished the meeting, the security guards didn't stop them, and someone broke in anyway. There was a hint of excitement on his face. Sophia, your good days are over. He threw a broken cell phone in front of me. A piece of the latest news popped up. A landslide suddenly occurred on a winding mountain road in a certain city, and dozens of passing vehicles were buried. The cousin was overjoyed. I asked someone, and Michael's car is inside. Sophia, are you unlucky? I stared at the comments scrolling on the screen, was silent for a while, and said, gather relevant personnel, organize donations for disaster relief, and contact the media for follow-up reports. My cousin was stunned, his expression instantly turned ugly. Sophia, do you have a heart? Your husband's life or death is unknown, and you only want to be in the spotlight? I paused, pointed at the camera expressionlessly, and said, give me a copy of the video you just recorded. Natural disasters and man-made disasters, you are still smiling and playing. If you don't want me to expose it, just shut up. This accident quickly became a hot topic. The relevant departments organized a rescue team to rush to the disaster site. I worked until late at night, and everyone left. I picked up my coat and walked out of the meeting room. Half of the lights in the corridor were off, leaving only the sound of my footsteps. I walked to a corner, suddenly held onto the wall, slowly squatted down, and called Michael for the first time since the accident. Unable to get through. The emotions that had been suppressed for a long time suddenly broke out at this moment. It was raining outside the window again. The misty water vapor came in through the half-open window. The secretary called at that moment. Sophia, the interview will start in 3 hours. I have sent you the manuscript. I leaned against the wall, closed my eyes, and took a long time to relax. Then I supported myself against the wall and stood up again. Okay, I'll be downstairs right away. On the third day after Michael lost contact, I traveled back and forth between the two companies for 3 days. Truckloads of relief supplies were delivered to the scene. The market value of the two companies soared. Many people watched my interview and talked about it. Aren't they said that Sophia and Michael are a couple? How can she be so calm and still be in the mood to show off? Why do you care about them? At least they really donated supplies and money, unlike you who are pointing fingers on the internet. TSK, this woman is so heartless. Not only did they think so, my parents thought so too. They watched the video of my cousin throwing a tantrum in the office and their faces turned black. Sophia, if you dare to tell anyone about this, we will no longer acknowledge you as our daughter. I said expressionlessly, then buy it with money. I've made it very clear. Give me the shares you have. The company is currently on the rise, and they had no choice but to finally give in. When I walked out of the house, James was waiting outside. He looked unhappy. Sophia, are you sincere to Michael? At this point, I hadn't slept for 2 days and 2 nights. I handed him the bag and said, wait a minute. After saying that, I walked towards my confidant who was waiting in the distance, gave him a few brief instructions, then turned around and opened James' car door. Take me to the airport. What are you going to the airport for? The emotions I had suppressed for so long finally broke out at this moment. Shut up. Now. Immediately. Take me to the airport. The secretary talked a lot to James on the phone. He was worried about me and accompanied me to the scene of the incident. The manpower and materials provided by the company arrived here a few days ago, and the rescue work is in full swing. After getting off the car, I ran straight to the rescue team. The road was slippery due to the rain and I fell a few times. My knees were all bruised. James pulled me from behind and said, Sophia, calm down. I just received news that the boss might still be alive. I stopped suddenly, turned around, and pushed him. Why didn't you say so earlier? This was the first time James saw me lose my temper. He shrank his neck and said, there are several sections where the incident happened. The boss might not be trapped underneath, but blocked in a certain section of the road. Isn't it that the mudslide destroyed the electric pole, so there is no signal? I glared at him fiercely for a long time, then yelled at him with red eyes, wait until Michael comes out, I'll ask him to fire you. I walked over to the supply team, put on my vest, and helped them distribute supplies to the rescue team. James put me on and started working. It was rainy and cold, and it was freezing. When I got tired, I went to rest in the tent. When I woke up, I continued to work. Anyway, I had already arranged the rear area, so I was not afraid of any trouble. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. My last clean piece of clothing was also covered in mud. The search and rescue team in the distance suddenly shouted, "Someone come out, call the doctor." I subconsciously looked up. In the drizzle, a tall figure broke away from the crowd and climbed up a high slope. Doctors quickly rushed up. Michael looked over here, and almost instantly locked onto my figure. He split the crowd and limped over here. He climbed over a small mound and tripped, looking both pathetic and funny. Michael finally walked in front of me and was about to speak. James came over and said, "Boss." Michael held onto the supply cart and kicked over with his good leg. "How dare you toss her over here? You want to die?" After saying that, Michael looked at my swollen knees and scolded me fiercely. "What kind of place is this? Enough of the good life." I stuffed the bottle of mineral water in my hand into Michael's hand and turned away. "Sophia." Michael's voice trembled, and his attitude softened in an instant. He followed behind. "Don't go forward. It's all muddy and dirty." I cried and vented my anger by stepping into the mud, splashing Michael with mud. He finally caught up with me and tied me up in his arms. "Don't run, does your leg hurt?" His palm was too warm, pressed against my cheek, covering the wetness brought by the rain. My eyes became hot, tears rolled down, and I cried, Sophia, have never wanted anything since I was a child. Why should I suffer so much for you? I have been unable to sleep or eat well these days and have been worried and anxious. Finally, I have found an outlet at this moment." Michael lowered his head and rubbed me carefully. "I'm sorry. I won't do it again. I swear, I won't let you suffer anymore." My chest ached from the stuffiness, and soon my tears soaked Michael's chest. Michael's heart was beating fast, hitting his ribs. His warm breath hit my head, and Michael leaned close to me and said, "Sophia, it's time to go to bed. Go and rest, okay?" Michael pushed me into the tent and prepared a clean cot. He worked meticulously. In just a few minutes, the cot became soft and comfortable. Michael squatted beside the bed, staring at me without blinking. I kept pushing him. "Go see a doctor, don't break your leg." "Okay." Michael kissed my forehead, and waited until I fell asleep before he got up and limped out. I slept deeply. When I woke up, it was pitch black and the rain outside the tent had stopped. I moved and found myself wrapped in someone's arms. The rough stubble kept rubbing against my neck. Michael woke up almost the same moment I woke up. He subconsciously hugged me tightly and said in a low voice, "What's wrong?" I didn't even know when he came up. I subconsciously asked, "Your legs?" "It's just a superficial wound. It will heal in a few days." I turned over and hugged him. Michael froze, a little surprised. "Sophia, what do you want to do?" I held his hand, and my hand followed his hem and went into his clothes. Michael didn't dare to move, and held my waist. His low breathing became clearer in the darkness. "No. Don't do this." His sexy and seductive breath came into my ears. Just when he couldn't help it, I stopped. "Okay. All right?" Michael gritted his teeth. I returned to his arms, closed my eyes, and hummed, "There are indeed no other injuries. I feel relieved." Michael didn't lie to me. The next day, my leg was almost healed. Michael and I boarded the return flight only after the rescue team left. I remembered the last time I went home, Michael and I had a falling out at the airport. When we left the airport, I deliberately pulled Michael to the other side. He followed behind me, smiling. "You still believe in this? Are you hiding something from me?" I covered his mouth and got in the car. In the evening, when we were almost home, it started to rain again. Michael and I were soaked because we couldn't dodge in time. The courier came with a package, and Michael held it for me and walked into the house. I went to the bathroom to dry my hair, and Michael stood at the entrance, unpacking my package for me. When I came out with a towel, I saw him standing at the door with his back to me, motionless. "What is that?" I walked over, my perspective changed, and the thing in Michael's hand came into view. My heart instantly jumped. The warm, soft material slipped smoothly around Michael's bony hands and hung down. Michael turned his head and looked at me, without saying anything for a long time. I turned around and was about to leave, but he grabbed me back and made me sit on the sofa. Michael laughed softly. "Miss, you really hid a big thing from me." My heartbeat slowed down a beat, and Michael grabbed my hand and pressed it against his body. "But I didn't expect this to be a reward. Wear it for me to see, okay?" Under my fingertips, I could feel Michael's blazing heat. I seemed to have made up my mind, and suddenly grabbed his tie, turned over, and pressed him under me. "You will be rewarded if you behave yourself." Michael's throat rolled. Okay. You can do whatever you want to me. Night fell and the room became dark. I covered his eyes and took the initiative to kiss him. Michael was already sweating and his breathing was hot. Sophia, let me see you. I held his hand and asked, answer the question, how long have you liked me? A long time. How long is a long time? I can't remember clearly, maybe it was the first time we met, or maybe it was the first time you called me a stray dog. Also, why don't you let me meet your family? Michael craned his neck and took a deep breath. My sister? She can't. Why not? Michael was silent for a moment. She likes women. While I was distracted, Michael broke free from my grip and tore off the veil in front of his eyes. He never played by the rules. By the time I realized what was happening, he had already carried me into the bedroom. Sophia, you look so beautiful in this. I was furious. You are an unscrupulous person. Wild dog. Michael, who was tall and slender, sat next to me, then leaned over and kissed me. Be good, curse a few more times and touch me. Wild dog. Michael leaned close to my ear and whispered something. I blushed and yelled, You shut up. You are shameless. The weak rebuke was exchanged for Michael's low laugh. In the thick night, it made people's legs weak. The moon was hanging upside down outside the window. The wind blew in, blowing away the papers on the windowsill. That was Michael's suicide note that I found in the safe. Since the day we got married, I had become the designated heir to his estate. I vaguely remember the day when I first met Michael. It was windy at the airport that day, and my handkerchief flew into Michael's arms with the wind. Michael took it off, folded it into a square handkerchief, and handed it to me. I didn't even look at it and passed by him. That was the first time I said anything about Michael. I hated him. I thought he had thrown it away. At this moment, the bright moonlight was shining on the bedside, and the small handkerchief was lying under the glass plate of the bedside cabinet. The glass plate was spotless. Michael saw the surprise in my eyes, chuckled, and kissed my lips. The clear wind, carrying his whispers, slowly passed through the endless night. Good boy, I will always be loyal to you. Like a wild dog that is difficult to train, loyal and gentle.